Let's talk about people. When we talk about people as individuals, we are talking about biology, neuroscience, physiology. We're talking about respiratory systems, circulatory systems, nervous systems, brain waves. In short, we are studying the relationships between the different parts that make up a whole called the person. When we talk about people in groups, we are talking about sociology, economics, politics, religion, philosophy. We're talking about families, classes, rulers, and ruled. In short, we are studying the relationships between individuals that make up a whole called a society. So if we are going to understand anything about societies, first we need to understand some basic things about relationships. Some of what I'm going to tell you about relationships will sound obvious at first, but we will soon move from the obvious to the mysterious, so bear with me. Let's begin by looking at a relationship that is fundamental to the human condition, a relationship that we all have, that between mother and child. The first thing that we might notice about this is that a mother cannot be a mother without a child, and a child cannot be a child without a mother. Each requires the other in order to have their identity, so the relationship is mutually dependent. Here's another obvious point. A mother can't be her own mother, and a child can't be her own child. Obviously, a mother is someone else's child, but she can't be her own child. When she stands on the mother's side of the relation mother-child, she is only the mother, not both. So the two sides of this relation are exclusive, opposites. They express their identity through the relationship to their opposite. We might call this an identity of opposites. The mother-child relationship is an abstract one. In concrete reality, it takes the form of the relation between Tanya and Jermaine, Sarah and Riley, or Martha and Brendan. But despite all the variations in the way mothers and children appear, there are certain universal traits that transcend all these specific differences. These universal traits cannot be changed by the individual subjective manifestations of mothers and children. At the same time, this abstract relation doesn't have a pure form divorced from its concrete manifestation. The mother-child relation has to be expressed through Tanya's and Jermaine's, Sarah's and Riley's, Brenda's and Martha's. Through a mother's relation with her child, she knows something about all children everywhere. Through the child's relationship with its mother, it knows something about all mothers everywhere. Through a concrete relation, we learn about the abstract. So in the same way that we can draw an equation that says mother-child and discuss the identity of opposites in this equation, we might also make another equation that says abstract-concrete and discuss this relation. All relations are both concrete and abstract at the same time. The concrete world is the everyday world of infinite variation, but all these variations are just improvisations upon a basic abstract form, a universal relation standing behind the concrete. But abstractions cannot exist by themselves. They must express themselves in the concrete. When we study relations, we are looking to explain two things. What is this universal abstract form, and what is the relation between this abstract form and the concrete appearance it takes? There are a lot of relationships that make up a society. When we study economics, we are studying the way people relate to each other as laborers in order to create and distribute all the goods we consume. In different places and different times, this relationship has been quite different. But in all societies, there have been two main relations: the relation of the individual laborer to a larger group, and the relation of different groups to each other. In early hunter-gatherer societies, work was divided between two different groups, hunters and gatherers. Men went out and hunted, women went out and gathered. How did the two groups relate to each other? Each group made half of the social product, and therefore neither half could exist without the other. At the end of the day, they met and shared the products of their work. It was only in this sharing between the hunters and the gatherers that each separate group expressed its true identity. How did the hunters know they were hunters? Because they weren't gatherers. How did the gatherers know they were gatherers? Because they weren't hunters. How did individual hunters relate to their group? By throwing spears at antelope, along with all the other hunters. They coordinated their activity collectively to create the hunter's half of the social product. In other words, The individual hunter was just the concrete manifestation of an abstract group called hunters. And how did individual hunters know what it meant to be a hunter? In the relation to another hunter, they understood something about all hunters, that hunters throw spear at antelope. Through the relation between two concrete things, we find the abstract. In feudal society, the two main groups were landowners and serfs. Serfs made most of the social product. Landowners took some of that product, even though they hadn't created it. Unlike the hunter-gatherers, the landowners didn't offer anything in return. It wasn't sharing, it was appropriation. The landlords got away with this because they owned all the land. There were other groups too. In order for the landowners to extract their taxes from the serfs, they needed a class of knights to poke the peasants with swords if they didn't work on the landowner's estate, and a class of priests to tell people God wanted them to work for the landlord. That's how the different groups related to each other. Within this serf class, how did individuals relate to each other? Well, serfs worked together on the landlord's land, and they worked in smaller family groups on their own land. Through their work with each other, they identified themselves as part of an abstract class called serfs. In a capitalist society, there are two groups, capitalists and workers. Workers create the social product. Capitalists take some of this product without offering any social product back to the workers in exchange. Like the landlords, they get away with this because they own the factories. How do the two groups relate to each other? The workers go to the factory and they work for the capitalist. At the end of the day, they don't get a portion of the social product back they created. They get wages. They take these wages to the store and they buy back the commodities they created. So the two groups relate to each other through the buying and selling of commodities. The capitalist buys a commodity called labor power, and the workers buy commodities called consumer goods. And how do individual workers relate to each other? Within a company, workers cooperate together to create a commodity. But the social product is made out of billions of different commodities made by workers all over the world. These workers all relate to each other through the buying and selling of commodities. They never see each other, they never speak to each other. The social relations between people become material relations between people and social relations between things. This is why commodities are so important to the study of economics. Commodities are social relations. When we buy a commodity, we are interacting with millions of other people. This doesn't happen when we use a commodity. When we use a commodity, it's just an interaction with ourselves and the commodity. But when we buy a commodity, we are exchanging money representing our own labor, for which we were paid in wages, with the labor of another group of people. But we don't see these relations. We just see ourselves and the commodity that we're interacting with. Thus, the process of exchange in a capitalist society obscures the social relations behind this exchange. When a hunter looked at another hunter in a primitive hunter-gatherer society, he understood his identity as part of a group through this relation. But workers in a capitalist society don't see other workers. They just see commodities. This means that the most important questions of economics, the relations between groups, and the relations of individuals to these groups, are obscured in a capitalist society. They are a mystery. To unravel this mystery, we must look more closely at the relations between commodities themselves.